I'm AJ Bianco, host of Reflect Ed, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Just like the show you're listening to now, shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Support for this episode of the House of EdTech comes from Whitebook. Coming up on episode 162 of the House of EdTech podcast, do you feel you can be authentic? Have you ever wondered how you could mirror your iOS device on a Windows PC? And I'm going to share 8 tips for teaching online. Strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome inside the House of EdTech. If this is the first time you're listening, welcome. This is your multiple time listening. Welcome back. We've got a great episode to share with you today. A lot of time, effort, and energy, as always, has gone into the planning of the podcast. I do want to start, though, with some sad news. As I record this, I was just informed that Sir Ken Robinson passed away. Here is something that was published on his website, sirkenrobinson.com. Sir Ken Robinson, Ph.D., died peacefully yesterday, August 21st, 2020, surrounded by family after a short battle with cancer. A New York Times bestselling author, he led national and international projects on creative and cultural education across the world, unlocking and igniting the creative energy of people and organizations. Sir Ken was the most watched speaker in TED's history, with his 2006 TED Talk, Do Schools Kill Creativity, being viewed online over 60 million times and seen by an estimated 380 million people in 160 countries. He was named as one of Time, Fortune, CNN's principal voices, acclaimed by Fast Company magazine as one of the, quote, the world's elite thinkers on creativity and innovation, end quote, and ranked in the Thinkers 50 list of the world's top business thinkers. In 2003, he received a knighthood from Queen Elizabeth II for his services to the arts. A loving family man, Sir Ken split his time between Los Angeles, California, and London, England, with his wife, Therese, Lady Robinson, their 2 children, James and Kate, son-in-law Anthony, and a granddaughter. I will link to his TED Talk in the show notes out at chrisnessie.com/162. Certainly that TED Talk had a profound effect on my teaching career, as creativity is at the center of what I do in my classroom at any level, whether it's high school or college. And I know that I will continue to carry Sir Ken Robinson's legacy forward by making sure that school does not kill the creativity in my classroom. To you, Sir Ken, thank you for the impact you made on me as a teacher and teachers everywhere in the time that you were with us. And now, my EdTech Thought. For this episode's EdTech Thought, I am calling it, Be Authentic. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. This week, I came across a tweet from one of those, big-named edu celebrities, calling out other edu celebrities and speakers for expressing the fact that they're tired and exhausted from all the PD that they've been presenting this summer. Can we stop with this garbage? I'm honestly very sick and very tired of people proclaiming from on high how other people should act. I know we are all entitled to our opinions, and social media certainly lets us all put our point of view out there. But I think I have reached a breaking point. The problem is, I am a teacher and public figure. And while I called this person out, I had to be careful with the tone of my replies. The power of how we connect with other people through various social media platforms should allow us to express ourselves however we want. But we know that's not always the case. There will always be someone to criticize our thoughts, our words, and our actions. What I think we need to improve on is not putting so much stock into what other people think. I know, a novel concept. On that same note, we also need to stop wasting so much energy on worrying about what other people are saying, doing, and thinking. Now, this entire thought might be one big contradiction. Here you are listening to me spout my thoughts, my opinions, and my ideas. You might take stock in what I say, and you might not. Either way is fine with me. My goal isn't to force you into one absolute way of integrating technology into your classroom or school. My objective has always been and will always be to help you see the value in what technology can do for your teaching practice, your leadership actions, and how using technology isn't some mystical dark art. Remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try. If you were going to allow me to influence you, then let me leave you with this. You do you. Don't worry about what other people think. Live your truth and tell your truth when you share what you share, wherever you share it. You deserve it. And that's my EdTech Thought. For this episode's House of EdTech recommendation, I came across a great question on Facebook from Cindy Swartz in the Tech With Us community, and Cindy asked the group, the world, I guess, her question was, what is a good app to use on iPads and iOS devices that will allow you to mirror an iOS device on a teacher's Windows 10 computer? So, I did some research, and I found something that I'm very comfortable recommending because it works. And it works. So the app is called Let's View, which you can find at letsview.com. That's LETSVIEW.com. And Let's View is a tool that allows screen mirroring of iPhones or iPads to Windows 10 for free. If you're new to the program, free is my favorite four-letter F word. Aside from screen sharing, it offers other special features like whiteboard annotation, screen recording, and taking screenshots. This tool is available on various platforms and is perfectly compatible with Windows 10. To start using this awesome tool, you can then stream your iPhone or mirror your iPad to Windows 10. And here are the steps to follow. Number 1, install Let's View on your iOS device and Windows 10. Then launch the app and make sure that both devices are connected to the same internet connection. Step 2. On your Windows 10 machine, click on the code icon that appears on the right part of the main interface to get a QR code or a PIN code for your device. Then on your iPhone or your iPad, input the PIN code or scan the QR code shown on the screen of your Windows 10 computer. Open the control center of your iPhone or iPad and then tap screen mirroring to connect. Once you're there, your iPhone or iPad screen will be shown on your Windows 10 computer immediately. It's super simple, and again, the app is called Let's View, and you can find it to download for your iOS device and your Windows 10 computer by going to letsview.com. And that's my EdTech recommendation. Oh my God, it's fall 2020. The school year has started. The school year is starting. You have to teach online. You have to teach hybrid. Oh my gosh, what are you going to do? Well, first, calm down. You got this. You can do this. You did it in the spring, and you might have to do it now. Or if you're listening to this podcast at a time where COVID-19 and remote and distance learning is, a thing of the past, you might find yourself teaching online in some fashion, in some way, in the future. What I'm going to share with you in this episode are 8 tips and things to consider when teaching online. Let me give you those items first, and then we'll go into a little detail about each one. Number 1, communicate your goals. Number 2, kiss your students. I'll explain shortly. Number 3, camera on, camera off. Number 4, no comment. Number 5, mute everybody. Number 6, breakout groups. Number 7, chat is your friend. And number 8, put yourself in the shoes of your students. Let's break it down. So, communicating our goals. Number 1, let your students know what the objective of each session and lesson is. Under normal circumstances, you may have displayed your lesson objective somewhere in your classroom, maybe in a Google slideshow, maybe you wrote it on the board. Okay? This is a valuable strategy for helping our students know and understand what they are learning, why they're learning it, and what they are being asked to do during a lesson. This is especially important when teaching online because of the multitude of distractions your students might experience while learning from home. Why wouldn't you want your students to know where they're going during a lesson? Be intentional about communicating your goals each and every lesson, each and every virtual session that you do. Number 2, you need to kiss your students. And by kiss, I mean keep it short, silly. I don't care what age you are, people have short attention spans. We skip commercials. We listen to podcasts faster than 1x. Heck, you might not even listen to podcasts all the way through. Side note, you're going to want to listen to this episode all the way to the end, as I have 2 special announcements. Inevitably, your students will check out at some point during a lesson when they are in the same room with you. They will most certainly get bored and not be interested if you think you can get on a video call and hold their attention for 45 to 80 minutes. I don't care how cute the fonts are or how funny the GIFs are that you put in your slide decks. Kids will check out and zone out, and they're not going to pay attention the entire time. If you have to have all your students on a call for an extended period of time, you need to keep your lecture short. You should break up your sessions into manageable chunks, kind of like putting in commercial breaks, except in this case, your students can't skip or fast forward through the commercials. You might discuss content for, say, 10 to 20 minutes, and then give your students time on their own to complete a task, and then return to the call. You can also use the breakout room feature on your video call platform. Zoom already has this feature built in, and at the time that I'm recording this episode, it will be coming to Google Meet very soon. The important thing is that you need to afford your students the time to reflect and make sense of the content you're teaching. Again, this is something we do when we're in school, in the same classroom with our students. So we need to find a way to translate this into online teaching. Okay? So again, you need to break up the lesson. When you're in your classroom, you don't get up and lecture for 45 minutes or for 80 minutes if you're in some type of block schedule setting. You speak a little bit, then your students do something. Okay? Basic 3-part objective type stuff. Number 3. This is something I have seen a lot of debate on Twitter and other platforms. Camera on versus camera off. Should you require students to turn on their cameras when participating in a video meeting? My honest answer? Yes. But with all the yeses I can come up with, I certainly have some exceptions and want to give you some things to think about to make the best decision for you and your online teaching. First, quarantine sucks. I probably didn't even need to say that. I know it, you know it. Social interactions are limited in many places and don't look like they did months ago. Teaching online is never going to compare to teaching in person. As humans, face-to-face interactions are crucial for conveying information, and you and I both know that body language can get lost in the shuffle of remote and virtual learning. If you can't be in the same place or the same space, video is the next best thing. In my classroom, I've always had the policy that if a student didn't feel up to participating that day, for whatever reason, and I work with teenagers, so there can be any number of reasons why a student isn't up for participating on a given day, they just need to let me know and communicate with me. I don't always need all the details, but I foster open communication and respect for my students. Let your students know the value of having their camera on, but also show respect if they want to have it off sometimes. Just don't do something stupid, like tying their grade to whether or not their camera is on, or that they must make eye contact. If you think you can actually track any of that, you are nuts. So don't try to make camera on and how much they participate part of their grade. Okay? Just respect if they want to have the camera on or off, and just be open to communicating that with your kids. This leads me to my next point. Number 4, no comments. If their camera is on, don't make any comments about the environment that they're in. You don't know what their quote-unquote normal looks like. Focus on teaching. Remember, that's your job, to teach. Focus on that. Focus on your content during online sessions. Their environment is irrelevant. Now, you should suggest that students participate in these video sessions in a place that is comfortable for them. You can, and you certainly should suggest that they choose a quiet place, but we need to be understanding if you're teaching someone, say, with siblings, and they are all gathered around the kitchen table learning and participating in video calls at the same time. If your students want to eat or drink during a video call, I don't recommend putting rules in place about no eating or drinking during class. Remember, they're at home, not the classroom. If they make a mess or spill a drink, that's their problem. I do strongly recommend, though, that you tell them to still not put gum under their desk or their table. That's just gross. And ultimately, remember that they are in their home. And while they are participating in school, they are not at school. You can't impose physical school on their physical home. Now, yes, you want to advise students, to dress appropriately and things like that. But don't comment about, their background or, what you see or hear. Again, you don't know what's going on. Let's pause here from a word from our sponsor, Wipebook. Are you a teacher who fosters creativity in your class? Are you the person who wants to save and easily organize all your notes, drawings, and doodles? Let's talk about Wipebook. I've been using their great alternative to paper notebooks and flip charts for a month now. The Wipebook flip chart is the perfect marriage between paper flip charts and whiteboards. A Wipebook flip chart comes with 20 surfaces per set, 10 double-sided sheets, one plain and the other is graph paper. Each sheet measures 2 feet by 3 feet. And their accompanying app, the Wipebook Scan, which is available for iOS and Android, their app allows you to easily digitize, organize, and sync your work to Google Drive and other popular cloud storage services. If you're tired of wasting paper and money, you should try the Wipebook Flip Chart or one of their other products like the Wipebook Mini Scan, Notebook, or Workbook. Go to wipebook.com and get 30% off when you use the promo code House of EdTech at checkout. If you're in a position to order in bulk for your district, you can get 40% off if you visit wipebook.com/House of EdTech bulk. That's Wipebook, WIPEBOOK. Thank you, Wipebook, for supporting this episode of the House of EdTech. Before we get to the final 4 of my 8 online teaching tips, let's recap the first 4. Number 1, communicate your goals. Number 2, keep it short, silly. Number 3, camera on versus camera off. And number 4, no comments about what you see or hear. Don't make kids feel uncomfortable based on where they're learning from. And let's move on. Number 5, mute all. I don't recommend calling out students who have some type of noise in their background. Whatever video conference platform you are on, utilize the mute all feature on your video conference platform. There are some features coming to Google Meet and Zoom with raising your hand and how we're going to encourage students to participate. So use that mute all feature and unmute them when they raise their hand and they want to engage. Don't embarrass a kid or single them out because this is all new. It's got its challenges. Again, be respectful, and there's nothing wrong with letting them know that you start all sessions by muting everybody. Number 6, breakout groups. One of the most popular features of virtual teaching is the ability to create smaller breakout rooms for students to work in smaller groups on a video call. The great thing about this is that you don't have to create multiple meetings. This is built right into Zoom, and again, as I'm recording this, it's coming to Google Meet. But consider this. Develop and create more permanent groups. Allow your students the time to develop some real connections within their class. Again, at any grade level, how they interact socially with other people is important. And if you're teaching online, there is going to be something lost in translation when it comes to connecting with their peers. So maybe creating more permanent groups could help to foster some positive relationships within your class in the online teaching setting. Give them time to learn from each other without having to worry about developing new chemistry every time you break out into smaller groups for discussions or activities. One suggestion I want to make is the clock buddy concept. This is where at the beginning of the year, you give each kid a analog clock and you have them put down, some a peer's name at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, etc., till they fill up their clock with 12 people. This is a great way to break out into smaller groups, and this is because they get to develop their own groups, and all you have to simply do is say, all right, we're going to break into our smaller groups, and you're going to partner today with your 2 o'clock buddies. Okay? Works great in the elementary school when we're in class. It's also valuable at the middle and high school levels because, again, they know each other, and it's a way to be able to change up the groups, but give them some ownership of their groups. Number 7, utilize the chat feature. Now, passing notes in class back in the day was the back channel you grew up with. An appropriate back channel can be a very powerful addition to any class, and that is no different when we're teaching online. We could argue that we need to back channel now more than ever. Leverage the chat feature in your virtual space. For me, that's YouTube. When I'm using StreamYard to live stream to YouTube, kids can see the video, obviously, and we leverage the YouTube chat feature. You can also do this in Zoom or Google Meet. The text chat on all of these platforms is also recorded. I know in Google Meet, it'll create a Google Doc that will go right into your Google Drive. On Zoom, you can download a transcript of the chat. And of course, on YouTube, when you replay the video, you've got a record of everything that was typed into the chat room. Now, I do recommend you turn off the private user-to-user chat in Zoom, though. That is the actual digital equivalent of passing notes, and that stuff isn't going to really contribute to the conversation. But I leave that up to you. If you do leverage the chat and you're not sure where to start, maybe start here. You could use the chat as the platform for exit ticket activities at the end of a meeting. You could also use it as a community note-taking forum as well. I mean, we've all tried to get all of our students to go into one Google Doc to take notes. That could be very messy. But if they're asking questions and recording definitions or just making points about the content or the topic that day and they're doing it in the chat, boom, you've got some community notes that can be used at a later date. And our last online teaching tip, number 8, put yourself in the shoes of your students. Okay? So last but not least, I want this to really resonate with you. This might be the most important. And it revolves around empathy, which you and I both know is not always easy to express. We must put ourselves in the shoes of our kids. This shouldn't be too difficult since many teachers around the country, you and I included, we taught from home. We did some type of hybrid learning in the spring. So we already know what this sort of feels like. But I think as we start here in the fall of 2020, we need to be extra sensitive to our students' needs and feelings. We will all have more in common than you think. Consider allowing for what I call water cooler time at the start of a virtual session or even on your learning management system. Give your students time to shoot the breeze. Your regular classroom is not all business all the time, and you can't expect your virtual classroom to be all business all the time either. Post a joke of the day. Ask your students how they are feeling, and ask them to only respond using a GIF in the virtual space. Find ways to make school fun. Yes, even online teaching can and should be an enjoyable experience. But this starts with you. If you're not enjoying yourself, how can your students? They are going to follow your lead. Make your online teaching something you would want to engage in if you were a student. Ask for their feedback. Ask for their feedback often. When you take time at the start of the school year to develop your classroom climate and culture, make sure you ask your students about their experience with online learning from last year. Find out from their perspective and point of view what worked, what didn't work, what did they like. Use that feedback as you go forward. So to conclude, when you're teaching online, consider the following. Communicate your goals. Let your kids know what's going on. Keep it short. Don't expect that your students can be engaged for 40, 50, 60, 80 minutes. Chunk your content. Chunk what you do. Camera on versus camera off. Again, it's up to you, but I certainly would recommend try to encourage your kids to have the camera on, but understand if they don't want to. No comments. When the camera is on, don't make kids feel bad or ask questions or call out stuff you see in their backgrounds. Again, the goal here is not to make anybody feel uncomfortable or have a negative experience that has nothing to do with the content. Mute them. Don't let them speak. Mute their microphones. And when appropriate, let them speak. Breakout groups. Give them ownership. Use something like Clock Buddies, but break them up into smaller groups. Chat. Use the chat. Back channeling is powerful, and here's a great way to promote a digital literacy skill. Again, whether it's community note-taking or just how they interact in the chat space. You don't have to explicitly let them know, but if you model and you encourage positive typing and communicating that way, maybe, just maybe, it'll bleed over into how they text and communicate when they're not in your class. And again, last but not least, be empathetic. Consider the experience, feelings, and emotions of your students. Be empathetic. Walk a mile in their virtual shoes. They'll benefit, and so will you. If you have more tips for teaching online, I would love to hear about them. What works, what didn't work for you, share them. Go to chrisnessy.com/162, leave a comment on the show notes, or go to chrisnessy.com/feedback, and you can connect on Voxer, Flipgrid, the whole 9 yards. Use the hashtag on Twitter, all those good things. Next up, what do we got here on the notes? We have some announcements. All right, before I say goodbye today, we have 2 very important announcements. The first announcement. There are now available limited edition House of EdTech 3D printed coins. I had 10 coins printed, and I thought this would be a fun way for you to support the podcast and get something cool. You can get yours, and again, there's only 10 available. You can get yours by visiting chrisnessy.com/coin, COIN. Each coin is numbered 1 through 10 and can be yours for a one-time donation of $25. This is powered by buymeacoffee.com. Again, there are only 10 available, so you do need to act fast. Now, if you hear this episode and you go and visit the link and there are no more coins available, well, I'm not going to have you walk away empty-handed. Send me an email, feedback@chrisnessy.com, and I will be happy to send you a House of EdTech sticker. I just got some new ones in stock, so if there are no coins available, I still want you to rep the show, but just shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to send you a House of EdTech sticker for your laptop, or if you're like me, they go on a garbage can next to my desk. So that's announcement number 1. Announcement number 2. I'll be honest, this is an announcement that I never thought that I would make. For personal and professional reasons, I am going to be putting the podcast on hiatus after episode 163. So this is episode 162. After episode 163, I'm going to be going away for a little while. How did I get here? This fall 2020, I will be teaching from home for both the high school that I teach at and also the 3 Rutgers classes. And both of my boys, the monkey and the crab, they are starting their school years remotely as well. So I will be teaching kindergarten through college. In order to be the best husband, father, and educator, something had to give. All the pieces of my life deserve my best, and that includes you. I don't think I can do my best work as a teacher and a family man and also create the content for this podcast. Now, I can say I'm not ending the podcast. I'm just not going to be able to produce it every 2 weeks through the fall. I will still be creating the 2020 House of EdTech Smackdown, and that's going to be released in December, and that would be episode 164. So please get those favorite tech tools, tips, and recommendations to me by December 1st, 2020. If you're not familiar, go to chrisnessy.com/162, and I will have a link to the previous editions of the Smackdown. That's the episode I end the calendar year with, where I turn the show over to you to share your, again, tech tools, tips, recommendations, favorite apps, extensions, plugins, strategies. It's all about you and what you loved this year. And there's not much to love in 2020. But if we focus on EdTech, there might be things that we do love. And I'm still going to create episode 164, the 2020 Smackdown. I will also still be co-hosting Podcast PD, so you will still get to hear my voice and thoughts on broader education topics along with AJ Bianco and Stacy Lindis. If you're not subscribed to Podcast PD, go to podcastpd.com/go and subscribe to that show. We can also still engage with each other in the House of EdTech Facebook group. So if you are not a member, go to chrisnessy.com/Facebook, and the community is growing every day, and I would love for you to be a part of that. I'm obviously still on Twitter. I hope you understand how much joy and pleasure I've gotten from creating this podcast, and I am literally holding back and fighting back tears knowing that I'm not going to be regularly producing this podcast as I have been committed to since January of 2014. But the podcast is not dying. Just take the rest of September, October, and November to get yourself caught up. Maybe I'm talking specifically to Stacy Lindis, but I know that there are other people out there who are, maybe you don't listen to every episode, but here's a chance to maybe get caught up. Don't unsubscribe, because again, in December, I will be putting out episode 164, and as I get through this school year, maybe in January I reevaluate and I can start to produce episodes on a regular basis. So that's just where I'm at. I'd like to think that you understand what this show means to me, and I also believe that you understand how hard it is, but can also understand, again, why I have to do this. Those are my two announcements. And let's close it out. Thank you for listening to episode 162 of the House of EdTech. Let's keep the conversation going. I do want to connect with you and hear your thoughts on everything I talked about in this episode and any episode in the back catalog. For the show notes for this episode, again, you can go to chrisnessy.com/162, or you can send a message by going to chrisnessy.com/feedback. If you enjoy the House of EdTech, go tell somebody else about this podcast. School is starting up again, you're reconnecting. Tell your best friend at school about House of EdTech. If you share the show on social media, use the hashtag House of EdTech. If you'd like, you can also become an awesome supporter of the podcast. Many thanks to my awesome supporters, who include Anthony Arnaud from the New Teacher Podcast, Dan Gallagher from gallaghertech.edublogs.org, Carlos Garza, Mr. G of the Aced Tech Podcast, Peggy George, who recently celebrated a birthday. Happy birthday, Peggy. Connect with her at pgeorge on Twitter. Jeff Herb, my original awesome supporter. Connect with him at Jeff Herb on Twitter. Mike Messner at Messner_Mike on Twitter. JP Prezavento, host of the Bits and Bytes of Education podcast. Find that over at jpprez.com. My newest awesome supporter, welcome aboard Lori Simpson. She is at North L Simpson on Twitter. and she is a high school English teacher here in New Jersey. So glad you're supporting the podcast, Lori. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Kyle Wilcox. Thank you so much. Connect with Kyle at Level Up EdTech on Twitter. Thank you to everybody for all your support. If you'd like to become an awesome supporter, go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. Again, those 3D coins are available. 10 are available. Go to chrisnessy.com/coin and you get a cool coin and you support the podcast going forward. As while I'm on hiatus, I will be doing some things here in the background to improve the show. So that's also something else that I will be doing. The next episode of the show is going to be episode 163, and that's going to come your way on September 6th. And that is going to be a special crossover episode with the EdTech Classroom podcast. If you are not subscribed to Maddie's podcast, go to edtech-class.com. Can't wait to bring in that conversation. Until next time, thanks for learning with me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.